everybody, welcome to my channel, Graceful Talks. And today we're going to be talking about how to manage disappointment. You know, those expectations that are unmet, how we manage them. I don't think there's anybody who hasn't had the experience where they've had disappointment. Disappointment is something that happens in life to everybody. It happens to me, it happens to the next person. Everybody goes through disappointment, and it can really make us feel down. It's a negative feeling. Most of us would rather not go through disappointment, but it's normal in life. It's something that would happen. I don't think there's anyone in life who would never ever have their expectations not met or never ever been disappointed. People will go through disappointment, people will disappoint you. There are certain things you put your heart on, and then you could get a disappointing news. Some very severe, and some over time. Every disappointment, I suppose, over time you get over it. But how do we manage this disappointment? For one, with regards to disappointment, the first thing is always to put your mind, your soul, everything into something you want. If, for example, you have something that is important to you, that is precious to you, and for example, a relationship, put everything you have into it to make it work. Make it work, make that relationship work. Put your heart, your soul, everything. And obviously, in a relationship, it's give and take. I've spoken about relationship, it's give and take. You expect that as well from the other person as well. Give and take that, as you're putting all your mind, all your soul, everything into it, it will be reciprocated by the other person as well. They will put their mind, their soul, and everything into it. So you put everything into it, and your goal and your aim is to get so much out of it because you've put so much into it. You've put so much into that thing. If, for example, you're looking for a job or you're trying to put a business together, what happens is that you put everything into it, isn't it? You put your 100% or even more than that. You put everything into it so that even when that disappointment comes, you know it has nothing to do with you because you've put everything, you've been diligent in that project, that thing you're doing, you've put everything into it. So that's the first thing I would say for you to be able to manage a disappointment. Make sure the control you have over that thing, which is you, you've put everything into it, you've put your 100% into it, so that even when that disappointment comes, you do not doubt yourself. So it has nothing to do with you, it's not you, because you've put everything into it. You put everything into that test, you put everything into that business, you've put everything into that interview. And so if that disappointing news come, you know within yourself, you don't need anybody else to authenticate this to you, but you know you've put your 100% into it. There isn't anything within your control you could have done. You've put everything into it. So that's the first way I would manage disappointment, any disappointment that will come. When I examine myself, I can see that I went beyond and above from my own side, from my own path. What I have control over, I have put that into it. And so there's really nothing I can do. I can't do anything. I've put everything. I've been diligent. I've put everything into that project, that expectation. I've done everything. So it has nothing to do with me. This disappointment is beyond my control. I can clearly examine myself and I know I put everything into it. It's something I have no control over. That's the first thing you want to do. And then with regards to disappointment, if that disappointment comes, you've examined it, it has nothing to do with you. And even if it does have something to do with you, you then think that next time, if I'm working on a project like this, if I'm doing this, I have to put in my best into it. I have to put in my sweat into it. I have to be diligent with it. That is it. Because everything has solution. You move forward. You always have to move forward, isn't it? So you move forward. So if in a case where you've examined yourself and you think, okay, maybe I didn't do as much as I could have done much more, and you haven't done that, the next, just leave it. The next one, you will put your everything into it. So if, for example, you put everything into it and then you get that disappointment, what you need to do is to step back. Always step back. Step back and re-strategize. Because definitely you'll be down, your spirit will be low, you're not going to be happy because you put so much into it. You had so much expectation on that project, on that interview, that job, that test, that business, and this has happened, or even that relationship, and this has happened now. So you step back. You have to step back. Disappointment is like loss, isn't it? It's a sense of loss. For every sense of loss, you go through like a kind of mourning stage. And when I say mourning, it's not like somebody died and that kind of mourning, but within you, it almost feels like that. I've lost this thing. I was hoping to hold on to this thing, but it's not there anymore. So just step back like you would over loss. Just try within yourself to just absorb it and then re strategize. That's what you do. You just have to re strategize again. And after you've kind of one day or some hours, you've thought about it, you kind of tried as much as possible to comfort yourself about the disappointment that's happened. And then you strategize. Strategy. I love strategies in life for you to be able to actually get something. There are certain things that come to you, just comes to you naturally. But there are certain things you have to go for it, you have to plan, you have to think about it, you have to evaluate, you have to review, you have to construct. I would say in this occasion, if this thing is really, really important to you and you've now gotten this disappointing news, you have to go back and re-strategize and think about what is the next step. What do I have to do now? How do I move forward? Because you have to mourn. That's a natural thing. So you will mourn, and that's fine. Especially if something is really important to you, because there are some other people who would deny it. If that's a coping strategy for you, that's fine. But I think it's better for you to acknowledge it, acknowledge what has happened. This thing, I actually wanted it, wanted that relationship to continue. I wanted that job. I wanted that business. I wanted to pass that exam, but this has happened. So it's always good to mourn and then acknowledge that feeling at that time, that feeling of loss, that feeling of disappointment. Just acknowledge it because it's natural. Everybody goes through this disappointment. So when you acknowledge it, you then strategize for the next one. After you've had that mourning period, and it varies with people. Some people would, within hours, they've kind of thought about it and acknowledged what that meant to them, what they wanted, but then they then move on. Because that's it, you have to move on. And part of the moving on is that you're now strategizing. So now you're now thinking, what is the next step? If it's a relationship, I suppose that has a greater impact on you if it's a relationship, because we always hear about that rebound that hasn't totally sank in properly and you're moving to another relationship. So sometimes it might be a good idea to actually wait a little bit and think about it. Think about what didn't work well, what could I have done better, what was the feedback, what happened. If it's a relationship is a serious thing. I wouldn't advise that somebody just ending one relationship just jumps into the other. I think it's good to always step back a little bit, mourn it, because it was a very important part of that person's life. It's no longer there. So you kind of have to go through that mourning stage where you acknowledge all that. And then also think about what the issues were, what the problems are. Because what you don't want to do is a repeat of it again. You move into the next relationship and it's repeated again because you really didn't grab what went wrong. You're not using the feedback to move forward so that something like that doesn't happen again. And sometimes it's not even your fault, it's not that person's fault, it's not my fault that that has happened. However, there's always a learning in everything. There's always a learning, even though it might not be your fault. Maybe there was a certain thing as well. Maybe earlier on you could have seen something there, but for whatever reason, maybe you kind of missed that. So even though it might not be your fault, I would always advise that you reflect, you review it, you go through it and see so that when you go into the next relationship, you can avoid that as well. And with other things like maybe a business, like a job interview, like an exam, it's the same as well. You want to go back as well and check it and see, what part didn't I do well? What didn't I answer in the way they wanted? Go back and think about it. It probably won't take you as long as it will take in a relationship, because what you need to do is, if for example it's a job interview, you start looking again and putting in more applications. If it's, for example, an exam which you'd fail, you're going to want to do a receipt or apply to do the exam again. So those kind of a thing. But it's always good to mourn, and mourn is different ways of mourning, as in let it sink in, understand that something important to you, you've lost it, or you didn't get it, you really had high expectations about it. And then the next thing is to review, reflect, so that you don't make the same mistakes again moving forward. And then begin to put yourself out there, whether it's for another relationship, whether it's for a job interview, an exam, whatever. Just put yourself forward again, and then begin to apply and put your 100% into it, put everything into it. It definitely will happen. It will happen. It's normal to go through it, but this is how I have managed my own disappointment. That's it. I've been disappointed in several ways where I think I really wanted this thing. I really wanted to hold on to this, but after I've done all that, reflect, I review, and then I start the process again, and I put my 100% in. So thank you for watching this video. Thank you for subscribing. Thank you for liking. And thank you for those who have hit the notification icon. They get alerts when a new video comes in. Please like and share it. And thank you so much.